Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into NB12, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Here's what's making news tonight. Increased police presence in the capital after an emergency meeting between the Prime Minister and law enforcement heads. An MP objects to national security being armed. The last surviving founder of the PLP has died, and reaction to the new administration's tourism incentives. Those stories and so much more on the way. I'm Nikia DeVoe, and NB12 starts right now. Joining us here at NB12. Less than 12 hours after Prime Minister Perry Christie called a crisis meeting on crime, officers of the Royal Bahamas Police Force hit the streets of New Providence to begin saturation patrols. That meeting was attended by the National Security Minister and his junior minister, the Attorney General, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Commissioner of Police, the Commodore of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, and the head of the National Security Council. The Prime Minister has reportedly directed Defense Force officers to take over some of the functions of police so that officers can spend more time in our communities. Police officials are confident saturation patrols will help to reduce violent crimes. Vonik Toot reports.
You may have noticed an increased police presence on our streets last night. Well, Assistant Commissioner of Police Yulin Hanna says you can expect the same thing tonight, tomorrow night, and the night after that as the Royal Bahamas Police Force begins saturation patrols. He says criminals should be very concerned.
It is comforting to know and to note that the police are out in the community en masse. And so what you saw last night was a very large number of patrol cars. And so police officers were in a position to do one of two things. One, to prevent offenses from taking place in the first instance. And secondly, if anything happened, to be able to respond in record time so as to eliminate and to reduce the suspect ability to evade arrest and detention. And so it's a very strong statement that we have made.
During a crisis meeting on crime yesterday, the Prime Minister ordered the leaders of law enforcement agencies to proceed with a sense of urgency in addressing the escalating level of violent crime in New Providence. He also reportedly called for an immediate increase in police resources on the streets and heightened intelligence gathering. 20 people have been murdered in the Bahamas since the Christie administration came to office on May 7th. 21 murders were recorded in May alone, the largest number ever in a single month in the country's recorded history. The murder count for the year stands at 65, up from 57 this time last year. Hannah says you won't just see a robust police presence in crime hotspots like inner city communities, but throughout the entire island.
If you're not careful, if you try to select a particular community, then you're displacing crime. It's like the balloon effect. You come here and you keep pushing it out. And so we want to canvass the entire island, and by canvassing the entire island, hopefully we'll be able to get these persons to see and understand that the police are very serious, and that the community is no longer going to be tolerant of the behavior that we see being manifested by some of these persons who quite frankly behave like miscreants.
The ACP would not reveal how many officers will be patrolling our streets each night or what time they'll be there. However, he did say the force has the support of contracted officers and police reserves. Does the police force have the resources to consistently carry out saturation patrols, though? Hannah says yes.
As a police force, we go confidently into the future, knowing that what we don't have, we will get, but also knowing too that the challenge of management rests with us. That is to say, that the government can give us everything that we need. At the end of the day, it is that divisional commander, it is that superintendent, it is that assistant superintendent, it is that person who must demonstrate that he is worth his salt and use the resources properly, deploy the people effectively, keep them properly motivated, and keep the troops where they must be. And that is in the public domain.
The Assistant Commissioner says this initiative isn't the end-all and be-all. However, it will help to make our communities safer. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonik Toot.
Well, as debate on the 2012-2013 budget continued in the House of Assembly today, the issue of members of Parliament carrying licensed weapons was still a hot topic. Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner urged the government to rethink its decision to allow the two national security ministers to carry guns. Minister of State for National Security Keith Bell confirmed earlier this week that he and National Security Minister Dr. Bernard Nottage are personally armed with police-issued firearms. Butler Turner said she is opposed to what she believes is a reckless move.
And I commend Mr. Christie as the Prime Minister. I understand he does not have a gun, but to have his national security ministers armed, Mr. Speaker, where does that put our people who don't have detailed bodyguards, who feel unsafe in their homes? Where does that put us? This is a government that came to power, they said, on a majority of people supporting them, and yet they feel unsafe, so unsafe, Mr. Speaker, that they are now armed.
The Long Island MP said that she has been threatened more than once during her political career and still didn't feel the need to carry a gun.
And where does that put those of us who are to the side opposite, are so hated by the people who voted us out of office? Should we not then try to arm ourselves? I don't wish to be armed, Mr. Speaker. Let me state that for the record. I do not wish to be armed because there is nowhere in this country that I am afraid to go, even as a woman. I have no fear of that. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have no bodyguards. And I will go even further, Mr. Speaker. During my tenure as a Minister of State in the previous administration, the police records would also reflect I received 2 death threats. 2 death threats. And they were investigated. I never made them public. And never once, Mr. Speaker, did I feel that I needed to be armed.
Well, Prime Minister Perry Christie today extending condolences to the family of native Long Islander and PLP founder William Bill Cartwright, who passed away in the Princess Margaret Hospital at 4 this morning. Cartwright, who spent the last 2 years of his life near penniless in the Good Samaritan Senior Citizens Home, lived to see the PLP win the government again, but never got his final wish from the Prime Minister. Our Charisma Robinson reports.
Caregiver at the home, Reverend Kendall Capron, says Cartwright made several requests for the now Prime Minister Perry Christie to pay him a special visit and give him recognition as one of the founders of the Progressive Liberal Party. However, that never happened, and Capron says it just breaks his heart.
I knew Mr. Cartwright was going to pass away soon. That's why I was keep begging and begging, please come. Just come. Don't bring nothing. Just come. Mr. Cartwright would have feel good because he still had that sense to know who was the leader. He always talk about Mr. Christie. Mr. Christie, I feel he's a man of with a good heart, with good intentions, but I don't know the reason why he didn't come. He knows, I don't know, but I know Mr. Christie's a good man with a good heart, but I don't know why. So it's got to be a reason why. I'm not gonna hold him. I'm not gonna hold him for that. But
last Wednesday, Cartwright was admitted to PMH after he stopped eating. In his final days, Capron says the 89-year-old was at peace.
The last of Mr. Cartwright was, he's very happy. He was very happy. But we saw where he made a change, and I thought he should be in hospital. A&E sometimes has a very bad name, taking care of people. But I can tell you, that accident emergency handled Mr. Cartwright with royalty. I've never seen that before. I've never seen that before. It was like the Governor General was approaching. It was beautiful. That was some of my last with Mr. Cartwright, to see how well he was handled and treated by Dr. Bullitt and his staff at the Princess Margaret Hospital.
Cartwright formed the Progressive Liberal Party with Sir Henry Taylor and the late Cyril Stevenson in 1953. He was voted out after he helped form the PLP. During the budget debate in the House of Assembly this morning, Christie described the nation builder as a brave man and a mighty patriot who nearly 60 years ago struck a blow for freedom that continues to reverberate in the life and political ethos of our country.
He was always at pains to play down the historical role he had played in laying the foundations for party politics in the Bahamas. Although he personally suffered a great deal for that, and for his courageous battle against the racial and economic injustices of his day. He was never one to hold grudges against anyone. He was a man of enormous goodwill, and a spirit of reconciliation was deeply embedded in his character.
Christie could not be reached for comment on why he never visited Cartwright. In recognition of Cartwright's contribution to this country's development, a state-recognized funeral will be held for him. Capron says while he appreciates the gesture, he also wants the government to pay for his burial.
The state-recognized funeral, Mr. Cartwright looking forward to that. That's something he always talks about. He's looking forward to having a state-recognized funeral. I was told from cabinet that we'll have a state-recognized funeral, but no funds, no monetaries. But how are we going to bury him? We don't have no money to bury Mr. Cartwright. Mr. Cartwright came in the world with nothing, and Mr. Cartwright left for this world with nothing. 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 Not a penny. Nothing. So if the government don't help us to bury Mr. Cartwright, then Mr. Cartwright gonna have to stay here.
Reverend Capron says Cartwright's funeral will not be held until Governor General Sir Arthur Folkes returns from Cuba on June 17th. Several weeks ago, Sir Arthur paid a special visit to the nation builder. Cartwright is survived by 4 children. Reporting for NB12, I'm Charisma Robinson.
Long Island MP and FNM Deputy Leader Loretta Butler Turner also sending a statement on Cartwright's passing. She also acknowledged him as a nation builder and a founder of the modern Bahamas. Butler Turner echoed the sentiments of the owner of the old folks' home that the man affectionately known as Bill did not get enough recognition, including from the party he helped form. The Long Island MP said there is an urgent need to record history and highlight the contributions of great Bahamians. She encouraged the current government to urgently fund a national oral history project through a public-private partnership, stating that we cannot afford to lose any more voices of history.